Good morning. I'm A. Scott Bolden sitting in for Roland Martin. Next on the 2-hour News One Now, veteran Congressman John Conyers is home in Detroit while the pressure from Washington mounts for him to resign following allegations of sexual misconduct. But he remains defiant, and some are questioning why Senator Al Franken, who is white and who has also been accused of misconduct, is not facing the same pressure to resign. I'll discuss this with today's panel. NBC's Today co-host Matt Lauer has become the highest and the latest profile journalist to be swept up by the tsunami of sexual misconduct charges that have rocked the entertainment and news industry. He was abruptly fired yesterday following a complaint by an NBC employee about inappropriate sexual behavior. We have some content that may surprise you. The NFL proposes close to $100 million in contributions to causes important to African-American communities as the Players Coalition that's been working on the deal breaks apart. We'll take a look at the deal and the dispute with a New York sports writer. There is international outrage over what appears to be modern-day slave markets. That's right, modern-day slave markets in Libya, of all places, where African migrants are apparently being bought and sold. U.S. celebrities are calling for action, but what's really being done? We'll talk to someone whose family has dealt with this horror firsthand. Another round of protests in Chicago over the 2014 police killing of Laquan McDonald, who was shot 16 times by a single officer. Now the cops' defense lawyers want to know where the journalist who revealed the dash cam video got his information. We'll talk about it. Also, a high court ruling or a high court order to a judge for rapper Meek Mill's case to hold a post-sentence motion immediately and to stop stalling. And later, we'll discuss the case that's becoming a symbol for criminal justice reform. We have a packed show, ladies and gentlemen. Let's get started. This is News One Now on TV One.
Zero tolerance means consequences for everyone. No matter your contribution to our country, you do not get a pass to harass or discriminate. No matter how great the legacy, it is not a license to harass or abuse.
That was Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi on the House floor yesterday, sending a not-so-subtle message to Congressman John Conyers, the man she called an icon just on Sunday. The 88-year-old lawmaker has been under fire since last week when BuzzFeed News reported that in 2015, Conyers' office paid a former staffer $27,000 after she alleged she was fired for rejecting his sexual advances. Since then, 2 or more accusers have gone public with allegations of misconduct.
He's a very wicked, he's very mean, he's cruel. He's a very cruel person. He demeans people. He makes fun of them. He is a horrible person.
He became increasingly verbally abusive and would berate me loudly and over ridiculous things.
Deanna Mayer worked for Conyers from 1997 to 2005. She alleges that he inappropriately touched her on several occasions and tried to get her to share a hotel room with him in order to have sex. The congressman denies all of these charges, and yesterday his son came out in his defense.
It's very unfortunate to see him fight so long for so many people and to automatically have the allegations assumed true. And of course, with sexual assault, women are to be believed. But in this instance, he has no history of this. And I think that if we're not going to make someone like Al Franken resign, when we have evidence of him groping a woman while she was asleep at that, I should say, I think it's disconcerting to me to see the way my father's being treated after he's given so much to this country. Not just for black people, but for people alike. Fights for everyone.
Congressman Conyers returned home to Detroit Tuesday night following a meeting with the CBC, that is the Congressional Black Caucus members, that included the chairman of the CBC.
We are not urging John to resign while the ethics investigation is going on. We think that is a decision for he and his family and his constituents to make.
Meanwhile, the House unanimously passed a resolution mandating sexual harassment training for members and their staffs. It is the first of several measures that have been introduced in the wake of the allegations that have rocked the Capitol.
The fact that some people end up walking these halls are subjected to a threatening or hostile work environment when they came here to serve their country, to serve their ideals, that's wrong. That's a disgrace. We cannot and we will not tolerate that kind of behavior.
I want to discuss this with our panel today. Dr. Julianne Malveaux, economist and president emerita at Bennett College, and also host of It's Personal with Dr. J podcast. Derek Holley, president of Reaching America, and Kim Classic, Republican contributor at Politichicks.com. I'm sorry. Forgive me, without a doubt. Julianne, what do you make of the Conyers situation versus the Franken situation versus the Roy Moore situation versus the Donald Trump situation?
I'm glad you put them all in the same sentence, because really there are differences and there are similarities. And it's interesting to me that this black man is being treated quite differently than others. Now, sexual harassment, any of the sexual misconduct is a no. But those last two women that you had on, they didn't talk about anything really sexual. They talked about him being mean. I mean, if you want to get character tests on every member of Congress, I mean, I could mention names, but I won't. But we've heard about some of the mean people who do things.
Conyers conducted himself in this regard while he's a sitting member of Congress. Doesn't that make it different, Derek?
I agree. And Conyers and everyone else, Franken, if they've done this, they all need to step down, because it's a double standard.
Then you will have no Congress, dude.
Well, you know what? We need to drain the swamp and get new people in here. Well, here's the thing. Because if it had been me or you,
God forbid,
we'd be locked up. Careers ruined. We don't get a second chance.
Well, Kim, let me ask you this. Don't we get to the bottom of all this by opening up the books vis-a-vis that $16 million that was used to settle these claims from what we call the Congressional Slush Fund, and then we'll see Republicans, Democrats, and others who have settled these sex claims, but also age discrimination claims, racial discrimination claims. I mean, if you're going to clean up at the House and make it transparent, don't you have to start with there as well as with Donald Trump?
Yes, and you have to include
you agree we got to start with Donald Trump because the Republicans are protecting him, aren't they?
Well, you know, the Republicans are protecting him.
Let me hear from Kim real quick.
You have to include gender discrimination as well, and I think they should open these books and it should take a look at what's going on in a whole. I don't think it's partisan. I think if you're a Republican, Democrat, black, white, blue, purple, if you are sexually harassing people, co-workers, or anyone, you should step down. Conyers has been there for how many years now? He's 88 years old. He's done a great job. I do not deny that. He was with the Civil Rights Movement. He was serving with Lyndon Johnson. I love it. But at some point, you do need to step down. And this is also, when you take a look at it, I'm all for term limits. I really am.
I resent the fact that you have mentioned his age, because that is age discrimination. The people of Detroit have chosen
his age. He's been there for 52 years.
The people of Detroit have elected to re-elect him term after term.
It's a very safe district,
if there was a young whippersnapper in Detroit who was going to challenge Conyers, they could do it. They've had that opportunity. But Scott, more importantly, to just peel back some of this, you know, it used to be Congress used to be able to do whatever they wanted to their employees. There were no laws that prevented them from sexually harassing, racial discrimination. If you look,
they were exempt.
If you look at the Hill right now, as a matter of fact, you look at the paucity of African American staffers on the Hill. So there's all kind of rife discrimination that's going on. I'd like to see those books. I'd like to open them up and see who all is in there. I'm sure it'll be Democrats and Republicans.
You know, Derek,
this is not a partisan issue.
Yeah, you know, Derek, I think that as a former sex crimes prosecutor, sex and sexual abuse and harassment is all about power. It's not really about sex. And yet, this seems to be a real simple issue that both Democrats and Republicans can get together on. Now, you see where you're going to have the harassment training on both houses, and that's a start. But I got to tell you, Democrats and Republicans have got to lead on this when it comes to passing legislation and being more transparent, getting rid of the slush fund, if you will, and really peeling the covers back on all of this, because that's the only way you can move forward. Do you think the Democrats and Republicans are going to be able to do it on this difficult, painful, but really important issue?
They have to. And the other thing I would add to that, obviously term limits, but the same thing, you know, I often say on my podcast, we talk about age as relates to these to our elected officials. And at 75, 80 years old, oftentimes we're talking about take the keys from our parents and grandparents. Can they drive?
You don't want to let Congressman Conyers drive?
But here's the thing. No, that's my point. That's not my point. If I can finish, please. That's not my point. That's my point.
The people have elected him. I mean, he may be, if he serves to be 120 years old, that's up to the people of Detroit, though.
That is true.
We've had doddering old white men like Strom Thurmond.
At 82, 83 years old, we're kind of stuck in our ways.
There's no age bar, though. So
there's no age bar. I agree with you.
There's a lot of assumptions that are absolutely inappropriate.
Where are your criticisms coming from, then?
My criticism
age has nothing to do with
Sure
this.
it does. Sure it does, because at 83,
With more age, you get more power?
What my point I'm trying to make is, at 83, 84 years old, we're not as sharp sometimes as we used to be. And the thing about it is, like I said, 83, 84 years old, we're talking about taking the keys from our parents. Can they drop? Can I finish? Can I finish, please?
So you defending his bad conduct?
I'm not finishing his bad conduct. Not at all. Not at all. But the point I'm trying to make is, why are we giving the keys to these people to run our country at 84 and 85 years old when we got some other young people who can step up to the plate? That's the only thing I'm saying.
Let them run against him. Let them run
against him. And I'm sure they will.
Well, Kim, let me ask you this, because I got to tell you, for years it's been known on the Hill, this is a power source center, right? But if you were a young male or female, you're trying to do public policy, there weren't really many options for you to complain, not you, but you generally, to complain about sexual harassment, because you didn't want to deal with having no job on the Hill, but also having no career. These are very powerful people. How do we fix that if we go forward and just being transparent? How do we fix that?
Yeah, and I have to say it's telling, because I know a lot of people that didn't understand or realize that there was a slush fund. There's a lot of people that didn't understand that.
On the Hill didn't know there was a slush fund.
Right, exactly.
And that kept them in line.
And for them to now say, let's implement sexual harassment training, I mean, what year is this? You're just now doing this? This is like protocol for any job, right? And I have to also say, as far as, and I'm not trying to be ageist or anything like that, but I felt the same way. No, I felt the same way when they were investigating the cybersecurity situation. Just times have changed, you know, and you got to be able to change with the times. And as technology is booming, you know, let's get someone in there that may be a little bit more with the times.
Congress has got to lead on that. That's all the time we have for this, but I appreciate it. In another case of inappropriate behavior, Matt Lauer, the co-host of NBC's popular Today Show, who was earning $25 million a year. That's a lot of money, Jim.
He should have been able to pay for anything.
A lot of money. Was abruptly fired yesterday. He still got fired. 2 days after an NBC employee met with network executives and provided a detailed account of inappropriate sexual behavior by Lauer.
Good morning. Breaking news overnight. Matt Lauer has been terminated from NBC News. Our chairman has released a statement saying a colleague had come forward reporting behavior in violation of our company's standards. We'll have more ahead.
Variety magazine had been investigating Lauer's conduct for 2 months. They reported behavior included giving a colleague a sex toy with an explicit note about how he would use it on her and calling a female staffer into his office and dropping his pants, allegedly. He was also known for making lewd comments. Listen to Lauer's comment to then co-anchor Katie Couric during a commercial break in 2006.
I'm going. Hey, sweater. Keep bending it over like that. It's a nice view.
In 2012, Couric was asked about a relationship with Lauer. Take a listen.
You co-hosted the Today Show with Matt Lauer for 15 years. What is Matt's most annoying habit?
He pinches me on the ass a lot.
Wow. According to Variety, several NBC employees complained to management about his behavior, but it fell on deaf ears. Donald Trump, who faces multiple allegations of sexual harassment, weighed in on the firing, of course, on Twitter. Wow. Okay, we'll go there now. Okay, wow, Matt Lauer was just fired from NBC for inappropriate sexual behavior in the workplace. But when will the top executives at NBC and Comcast be fired for putting out so much fake news? End of quote. And a conservative political commentator, Ana Navarro, summed up the current epidemic of sexual harassment allegations that have quashed careers in the entertainment and news industry, tweeting, quote, Matt Lauer lost his job. Charlie Rose lost his job. Mark Halperin, and Glenn Thrush lost their jobs. Billy Bush lost his job. Harvey Weinstein lost his job, Kevin Spacey and others. But in politics, Conyers is still in Congress, Moore still running, and Trump is still president. Let me go back to our panel. What is going on with these men of power? Hold on one second. You know, if you look at the tape of Matt Lauer, that 2006 piece, he's not really saying it to anyone in particular. It's almost like it's under his breath. He's got this really perverted facial expression, like, you know, it's almost sickness almost. Kim, let's go to you first. Let's go to you first, Kim.
Yeah, that was creepy.
That was creepy.
That was a very creepy.
That's what it was. It was creepy. And he looked up and looked down and said it.
Yeah.
And nobody was really paying attention to him. And then he went to do something else.
No, and I think, and I have to say the Oscar goes to Savannah, because for her to sit there yesterday and be like, I am horrified, I can't believe these allegations. Honey, you knew.
They knew.
You knew, girl.
And had to.
Yeah, you knew. But she did a great job at trying to say, you know, she didn't know. And I also thought for them to fire him immediately like that, overnight, there's lots of people that came out. The shoes have yet to all drop. And we're going to find out a huge bombshell, I think, in the next coming days.
Well, Derek, they did a lot of work in those 24 to 36 hours because you had to have corroboration, you had to have witnesses, you had to have documents and what have you. And I will say this, the perception or the rumors about his misconduct are one thing. But, you know, my grandmother used to say rumors are the precursor to the truth.
Absolutely.
And so very often she's right about that. But what's your take on this in Lauer?
Well, I think, as you said, they had a lot of evidence prior to yesterday when they let him go, because one of the things they had removed him from going to the Olympics and replaced him with Megyn Kelly.
Right.
So they knew that Matt was not going to be a part of the team. And so I think that's why they were able to move so quickly.
Sounds like Variety was doing their investigation and the NBC was doing a parallel investigation.
Sure.
That's what it sounds like.
The woman who's a claimant seems to have come in with a very detailed case. She went in with her attorney. She had documentation. And so people are saying, oh, they fired him so quickly. But it wasn't really that quick. We were listening to MS before we came on, and people were talking about the rumors about him over the years, about the fact that after he did the show, he would, go back to his office and do whatever with whomever. So, but one of the things, Scott, that I think we have to look at, everyone is acting so shocked about all these cases, but the introduction of women into the workplace did not change men's behavior sufficiently. I've been in, I don't know how many jobs where
but it's a place of power too, whether it's the Hill or whether it's corporate
you get an intern, you get a subordinate.
Bad behavior.
But this has not changed. It hasn't changed, and the whole notion of let's just make it zero tolerance is, I think, extremely important.
Well, it's a big part and a major move in kind of the culture of this thing. Sure. And if it continues, it's like many of us are trying to get it to see whether it's got legs or it's going to pass. But it's taken a lot of victims with it, and I think it's a good thing. This whole Me Too movement. That's all we got time for.
I think it's absolutely wonderful.
You would, but we got to clean it up. Next on News One Now. The NFL proposes contributions close to $100 million in causes important to black communities to try to put an end to player protests, as two very important members of the Players Coalition that's been working on the deal say the group no longer supports or speaks for them. We'll talk about it with a New York sports writer. Okay, folks, in an unprecedented move, the NFL is proposing $100 million in contributions to causes important to African-American communities. That's a good thing. The league hopes that the offer will bring an end to the peaceful but controversial protests for social justice started by a good Kappa man, Colin Kaepernick. I said that, didn't I? While the package appears to be a victory for players who've been seeking to partner in the NFL in supporting player activism, tensions within the Players Coalition has led two of the players to announce their departures from the coalition. Eric Reed and Dolphin safety Michael Thomas released identical tweets saying, quote, "The Players Coalition was supposed to be formed as a group that represents NFL athletes who have been silently protesting social injustices and racism. However, Malcolm and Anquan Bolden can no longer speak on our behalf, as we don't believe the coalition's beliefs are in our best interest as a whole." Joining us to talk about all of this by FaceTime is New York sports writer for CBS Local Sports, Jamal Murphy. Are you there, Jamal?
Yes, I am. Good to be here.
Thank you for joining us. We're here with the panel, but let's start right away. What's your take on this which appears to be a break, but I'm not so sure what impact it's going to have on the coalition and this deal with the NFL moving forward? What's your take on it?
Well, my take first on the actual deal is that it's a good thing. It's groundbreaking. We've never seen anything like this. In the NFL now would be doing more than any other league, the NBA, the NHL, Major League Baseball, as far as social justice issues are concerned. So I think it is a big deal. I think it's a big accomplishment.
But Jamal, if I may, can you hear me? Jamal, we're talking about a multiple billion-dollar industry and $100 million with contributions from the players and I think the teams as well as the NFL. That seems to be a drop in the bucket compared to the major issues we're facing vis-a-vis racism and social injustices for our communities of color.
Well, I agree. I think both things are true. I agree with you. You could say it's a drop in the bucket. It probably is in the overall picture. But at the same time, it's more than the other leagues are doing. As I was saying, it's way more than the NFL was even thinking of doing before. So it does show the leverage that the players had and that they were able to get something accomplished moving forward. But of course, this is not the end all be all. There's much more to do. There's much more pressure to put on the NFL. I agree with you there.
Yeah, we certainly ought to be keeping the pressure on because this isn't the end. This is the beginning of the journey, I hope, and I hope the players understand it. But can't we all get along? I mean, my goodness gracious, what is wrong with our community? I mean, this is progress, and now we have two very important members of the Players Coalition walking away seemingly because they weren't consulted? That makes no sense. Come on now.
No, you're right, and obviously there are issues, and all these organizations, period. There are going to be some disagreements and different factions, and I think that's the case here. We know Black Lives Matter themselves have had their issues within the organization, so this is nothing new.
Yeah, but Jamal, here's the deal. Sure, every organization, black or white, doing great policy work and great efforts have these issues, right? But our organizations, our African-American organizations, seem to want to share them with the world as opposed to sharing them within the organization, working it out, presenting the united front, and fighting for more money if really the ultimate end game is to improve our communities of color. What gives here?
No, I agree. I agree with you that you can't argue with that. I would, it's not a good look. I would rather they were all on the same page. But, there are factions. I think, as you said, this, some people feel like this is a drop in the bucket. It's not enough. And it also doesn't address the Kaepernick situation and why he doesn't have a job. And I think that's why the two players, that's the major difference that we see here is that they wanted that addressed, and that's not really addressed in this agreement.
Well, that certainly is the public. We've got the public story, right? You're one of our best sports reporters. What are you hearing vis-a-vis background? What's the real deal here? Is this going to pass? Is it going to move forward? And what else is going on politically behind the scenes in regard to this effort?
Well, I mean, it looks like it's going to pass from everything you hear. You do have the two defections at least. There may be more. So it's still a delicate situation. It's delicate not only on the player side, but on the owner side. As you could probably guess, the owners had to be persuaded to do this.
Persuaded? Is that what you call it?
Well, no, I mean, to put it nicely, persuaded.
Right.
But yeah, and that goes back to the original success of the players. In order, they use their leverage in this way to, I guess, force the owners to do something. Obviously, they would have never done this on their own. They would have never done this if it weren't for the pressure that the players put on them. So, but it is still a delicate situation. It's not done yet. And you're right. Both sides need to get their act together, and the players. It's the responsibility of the players, to help the communities, to help people of color, that they get their stuff in order.
Got it. Well, listen, Jamal Murphy, thank you so much for joining us. Let me jump in our panel right here. Derek, I see you almost jumping out of your seat about this. You must be a big sports fan. What's on your mind? Come on, bring it. I mean, it's $100 million is a lot of money, but it is a drop in the bucket when it comes to the Billionaires Club.
What percentage of their revenues is $100 million? That's what I want to know. It's less than 1/10 of 1%.
I was trying to go to Derek.
I know.
But here again, whether it's Roland or me, you're going to get it in. I'm going to come to you. I promise you I am.
But you're right. I'm going to get it in.
Derek, go right ahead.
Well, I think it's insulting with the amount, but it's a start. And I also feel like they're just throwing money on something it's not, and there's still no end game. Okay, I've met.
You say no end game. What do you mean?
Like, part of this was about criminal justice reform. There's a bill that was just introduced last week by Congressman Mark Walker from North Carolina. in conjunction with Congressman Cedric Richmond from Louisiana, a bipartisan effort for criminal justice reform. Okay, that's where the focus needs to be. The $100 million, that's good for the community. We appreciate it.
Well, but they've set up Kim, they've set up a committee, and the designated money going to UNCF and then other community programs, and I think there's another bucket for another set of programs that kind of cover not just education, but criminal justice reform and what have you. So the percentages are there, but you know, these types of projects and programs only work once you peel the onion back and you get down. So you can give it to UNCF, but what's UNCF going to do with it? But the other community-based organizations where a coalition or a committee is going to select who gets these grants based on what they focus on, how effective that money is used, it's got to get to the community, doesn't it? Regardless of what your politics are, it's got to get to the community, doesn't it?
Right. You're absolutely right. And I think the fact that the NFL is kind of handing this money over is kind of showing, they're saying, look, if it doesn't work, it's not really our fault, right? And they're feeling the heat.
Well, they'll have members on the committee, though. I don't think
but they're kind of like shifting it a little bit. And they're feeling the heat. They got people that aren't watching because people are kneeling. They got people that aren't watching because nothing's being done with Colin Kaepernick, right? So they feel this heat. $100 million is a drop in the bucket. I run a nonprofit. In our grants, we're requesting $2 million a year. And that's just workforce development in Baltimore City. So you're telling me $100 million is going to stretch how far? Not very far.
You know, Julian, what do you make of Thomas and Reed publicly not denouncing, but walking away saying that they weren't consulted and that two of the lead players that were kind of, you know, the lead, because you can't have a conference call with 300 players or 100 players and then get anything done. So you're going to have leadership there, representation, and then taking it back to the players. What do you make of this public break?
Well, I think at some level, as you say, can we all get along? I mean, it's an amazing effort for the players to come together, but just like the NFL and the players, they all don't agree. I mean, I imagine that Jerry Jones was pulled into this kicking and screaming for $100 million. I mean, he has never been particularly supportive of racial issues. So I'm sorry that these players did this, but I think it's par for the course, as Jamal said.
Well, we have to stay tuned and stuff. I just hate black people publicly breaking from the group. It really doesn't make any sense because we're not going to get that. We're not going to get fired like that. Let's keep going. Next on News One Now. International outrage over what appear to be modern-day slave markets in Libya, where African migrants are being bought and sold by smugglers. We'll talk to a defense attorney whose family has had to pay ransoms to free relatives caught in a system of horror. This is News One Now. We'll be right back. Okay, folks, we're back. I'm A. Scott Bolden, standing in for Roland Martin. It's that kind of thing you can't believe is still happening in 2017. News reports detailing modern-day slave markets in Libya, where African migrants and refugees are being bought and sold. This is a video of what appears to be West African migrants being sold at an auction in Libya. The refugees are from several African nations fleeing war and poverty, who were apparently victimized by smugglers as they attempted to make their way to Europe. Instead, they end up in lawless detention centers where they are allegedly sold to the highest bidder. My goodness. Several hundred protesters took to the streets in Paris earlier this month, demanding that the French and U.S. governments, along with the United Nations, take some action to stop this from happening. Celebrities, including Jill Scott and Common, have been tweeting about this situation. Common wrote, quote, "My heart breaks reading about what is going on in Libya right now. Please retweet to spread the news. We are not talking enough about this problem." But our guest today, defense attorney Yodit Tawaldi, posted on Instagram that her family has dealt with this very issue firsthand. She says 4 of her family members were taken hostage in Libya and relatives had to pay their ransom. Yodit joins us via Skype from Dallas, Texas, with more. Yodit, welcome.
Thanks, Scott.
Listen, you know, thank you so much for joining us to share this very personal story. I can tell that it is remains a deeply bothersome issue. Can you share with our audience exactly what happened with your family members and exactly whether the government or any government was able to help, or was this just something privately that you and other family members addressed?
Well, yeah, I had 4 family members, one of whom was 16, leave Eritrea. That's where I'm originally from, my family, and traveled from Eritrea because the conditions in Eritrea are very bad, which is primarily the reason why a lot of these African migrants are leaving their homelands, because of poverty or war,
Sure.
you know, the lack of freedom. So left Eritrea, went to Ethiopia on foot. From Ethiopia, went to Sudan. From Sudan, traveled through the Sahara Desert, and then went to Libya in hopes to, get to Europe by traveling through the Mediterranean. And so as soon as they got to Libya, they were kidnapped by a criminal gang, were robbed, were asked for money. The 16-year-old, my 16-year-old cousin, called us here in America and asked for $5,000 because that's what they were asking for ransom. Of course, we don't know if sending the money is actually going to help. We don't know if they are going to ask for more or take the money, sell them to someone else, because generally you're lucky to just be sold once. One person can be sold up to 4 times.
Yeah, but Yodit, if I may, your cousin that called, did he give you any context? Was your family aware that these family members were on this trek to get to Europe and to escape Eritrean?
Yes, we cautioned. They are cousins on my mother's side. My mother cautioned them and told them to stay where they were, to please stay in Eritrea and do not make this trip. And of course, they still made it, because this is what they believe, and for the most part, it's true, the only option they do have. Mm-hmm. They are looking for a better life, and this is the option that's best for them. So you can only imagine how bad it is in their respective homelands. So was kidnapped, again, asked for $5,000 ransom. We paid it. Apparently they, of course, beat my family members, broke one of my cousin's arms because the money wouldn't come fast enough. Luckily, they were released. 2 of them made it to Europe, and the other 2 they went back to Sudan. We don't know where they are in Sudan.
And how were they released, if I may? How were they released? How was the money sent, and how were your family members released, if you can answer those questions?
I believe the money was sent not directly to Libya. It was sent to Italy, and from Italy, because we had family members in Italy, and and our family members from Italy sent it on to Libya, because we had no idea how to send it or who to send it to.
Or how to track it, if you will, right?
Exactly. That was our biggest concern. We give all this money away, and can we ensure, and how can we ensure that they are going to actually be released? Mm-hmm. How they were released, I do not know. I know that my family members obviously got to Italy at one point first by traveling by boat. And as you know, a lot of people drown in the Mediterranean.
That's dangerous in and of itself.
Key thing here that I'm missing. We are hearing about this story now in the month of November in 2017. This happened 5 years ago.
Wow.
So recent.
So Yodit, when this all occurred, whether the beginning or the transfer of the money or once they were freed, were you in contact with the U.S. government or the Libyan government or the Eritrean government about the whereabouts of your family member, or was this all done on a very private basis?
On a very private basis. And my family is not the only ones that were victimized in this way. There are hundreds and hundreds of people, hundreds and thousands of people here in the U.S. that pay the ransom for family members in Libya, and it's all done privately.
Yeah, but Yodit, you're a very fine lawyer. I've known you for a number of years, and you're back and forth to Washington. Why not reach out to a congressman or a senator or the president or some government official for help, not only in whether it's to transfer the money or to fight this and find your family? Or is that just too idealistic for me and the listening audience to get our arms around?
This was something that wasn't shocking for us to hear, because we've always heard that these types of things have happened and have had better results just paying the money.
Right.
And for me, my way of helping is to take on asylum cases from Eritrea and from various nations, countries in Africa, in order to have them come the legal route. But a lot of those even the asylum programs are empty at this point. They're bankrupt, and we don't have enough options, or they don't have enough options to get to where they need to be, legally and take legal routes. And so it falls on deaf ears. Right now, what are the U.S. is doing anything. This administration has yet to say a thing about what is going on in Libya. And mind you, let's not be naive. A lot of people higher up in the food chain knew exactly what was happening and did absolutely nothing. The only reason why people are taking meetings all of a sudden is because CNN reported this, and now it's gone international.
So were your family members, was the threat pay the $5,000 or they're going to be sold into slavery or worse?
That wasn't clear. We were imagining that they would be killed or used in some way and eventually die. So that was what we were thinking. I had no idea that it went to the extent of, forced labor and people being sold into slavery, body parts, organs being taken and sold. Had no idea that was going on. I mean, the extent of the situation I had no idea about at the time 5 years ago.
And since they were released, right, have you spoken with anybody at the UN or the U.S. government or any country's government about not only what happened, but why it happened, and whether this is something that these governments can enforce and find those who kidnapped your family? But again, is that just unrealistic?
It's unrealistic. I mean, we're talking about the international criminal courts. They're the ones that have international jurisdiction to bring prosecution against those that are responsible in these various areas, or be referred by the UN Security Council. So it goes through this whole system that has absolutely nothing to do with the U.S. And so I know that a lot of people are frustrated because they want to help, as I am frustrated. And mind you, 5 years ago, I was a baby prosecutor at the time. So I absolutely had no understanding of all of this or how to go about this or finding solutions. But people are frustrated. They don't know how they can help. And that is primarily the reason why no one's really talking about it. Right. We're not even trending. This story isn't trending. The news outlets aren't talking about it. Well, we need to keep the conversation going, but we also need pressure on the Congressional Black Caucus. They've created an Africa task force that is built to address these issues. So we need to contact them. We need to contact Nikki Haley, who is a U.S. ambassador to the UN, and make sure that she stays on this, and that the UN and the EU and the AU and NATO and us, we all have dirty hands in this. I'm sorry, I gotta get this out. We play a role. We have to take responsibility. We've done to destabilize Libya in the beginning, and we need to do something and come with solutions at this point.
Fascinating story. That'll have to be the last word on it. Deeply appreciate you sharing. Keep up the fight. Keep up your great advocacy. Yodit Tuwalde, fascinating story. Thank you for sharing your story with us this morning. Next on News One Now, Donald Trump triggers a worldwide furor with his retweet of anti-Muslim videos. There's so much he retweets about, I can't even get it straight. We'll discuss reaction to the Muslim community. You're watching News One Now. All right, ladies and gentlemen, stick close. Don't turn that dial. Or do we turn dials anymore? I guess we don't. It's almost time for the second hour of News One Now. Stay tuned. Good morning. I'm A. Scott Bolden, in for Roland Martin. Next in the second hour of News One Now. The case of a Chicago teen shot 16 times by a police officer is far from over. Now, attorneys for the officer are trying to find out where the journalist who broke the story got his information. We'll have the latest. And later, a rapper's delight, Meek Mill. You've heard me talk about it. Finally gets his day in court after a judge is ordered to stop stalling. We've got a Fit Live win guest, Zaeb Zizi, in the house to explain some yin yoga benefits. We'll also talk to Ava Marcel about her role in TV One's new movie, quote, Miss Me This Christmas. Hour 2 of News One Now begins right now. Just over 3 years ago, a 17-year-old Chicago teen was killed by police in a brutal case that continues to roil the city and really this country, and it might get a whole lot worse. Laquan McDonald was shot 16 times, even as he lay on the ground by police officer Jason Van Dyke in Chicago. The police first lied about what happened until an independent journalist found out about the police dash cam video you're watching right now. Independent journalist Jamie Calvin has been called to appear next month at a pre-trial court hearing where the officer's lawyers are hoping he'll reveal where he got the information about McDonald's shooting long before the video was made public. But he has said he has no intention of revealing his sources. And folks, you got to remember, he's got a First Amendment right not to. Fat chance of him doing that or court making him do that. Over this past weekend, there was yet another protest over this case. It took a year after McDonald's death for Officer Van Dyke to be charged, and a judge had to order the release of the graphic video many of you all have seen of the shooting. What's next in this case? I want to reintroduce our panel today, Dr. Julianne Malveaux, who's with us, host of It's Personal with Dr. J, Derek Holley, president of Reaching America, and Kim Classic, our Republican contributor, Politichicks.com. I got it right that time. Thank you for my ear help. Ahead on News One Now. Are we there or are we going to the panel? We're going to go to our panel. Okay, let's talk about McDonald. Right? Laquan McDonald. This case won't go away. It's a horrific case. It's one where it's a graphic video.
It's
Malveaux, what's next, if you will, and kind of tell us kind of what we as a community ought to be thinking about this awful case from my hometown.
You know, Scott, we've seen these police killings over the years. We've seen, we're going to talk about the rapper. We've seen the injustices in the system. And this is just nothing different. The difference, of course, is that Rahm Emanuel lied, that they held on to the police video, that they did so many things to make it sound like the video contradicts the police version of what happened. And so, you know, Rahm Emanuel almost had to, people pushed for him to resign over this case. So this only is the only officer. Other officers have been disciplined, but this is the only officer who's being held on charges, and it's really important that he be convicted. They're trying to postpone this and postpone this. This journalist is not going to give it up. He shouldn't give it up, and that's and wherever the source was, that's immaterial. The fact is that we know what happened.
Well, the argument would be that if the journalist had this information through his sources, and that information was shared with the witnesses in the particular case, then those witnesses' testimony in this case, now or later, would be tainted and therefore unreliable. The problem with that argument you're going to hear is that even if that's true, it's not dispositive of whether the case should go forward or not, or whether the Van Dyke ought to be prosecuted or not. It's not dispositive. It may be some persuasive cross-examination.
Now you use the legal words on me.
I'm sorry.
What does dispositive mean?
Get in the woods on that.
What does dispositive mean?
Let me, the bottom line is this. It's not going to stop the case from going forward.
What does that mean, Scott?
What does what mean?
Dispositive.
Dispositive. That means it's not going to be determinative in regard to the outcome of the case. I was trying to move on, actually, Joe.
Well, I know you were, but in addition, if I don't know, the audience doesn't know, okay?
Oh, my goodness, she's schooling me. Derek, save me. Please save me. Please save me. My goodness gracious. We're going to switch seats after break.
I appreciate the definition, though. I really do. But in this particular case, I got to agree with you. I mean, and certainly
he should not. With Julianne?
I do.
Okay, let's do it. Let's go.
I do. He should not have to give up his source. Okay, that should be protected. But at the same time, I think it goes towards showing all the racial injustices that continue to happen and occur in our country. And again, until we get some real CJR, criminal justice reform, we're going to continue to see these kind of things take place throughout the country on a consistent basis.
Yeah, you know, Kim, it's interesting to see how the rights of the police officers certainly have to be protected, but how the lawyers for the police officers are seeking either delays or seeking this extraneous information that they think could help them, if you will. But, you know, as a trial lawyer, I've always seen defense counsel throw whatever they can up against the wall, and it delays, and who knows what happens, because delay is delay. At the same time, though, this journalist isn't giving up his sources. The First Amendment, there's case law, Supreme Court case law on all of this. It's just not going to happen. But unfortunately, the judge has got to deal with these motions, frivolous as they may be. What do you think?
Yes, I have to agree. I say before we're Democrat and Republican.
Get rid of this whole panel. They're all agreeing. This may be one case where it's hard to disagree on.
Because before you're Democratic or Republican, on this panel, we are still black, right? And so this has been going on for a very long time all over America. And the fact that Rahm Emanuel did not resign when this came out, it still blows my mind. Now, for me, why give up a source when obviously we want this source to maintain hidden? Because obviously this is helping us in a way that expose what really happened. If we went off of just a police officer's word, we wouldn't have any of this, right?
And it doesn't really matter what the witnesses were told or not told.
Exactly.
Because the #1 communicator on what happened is that video.
Precisely. Right. They cannot exclude the video. And that's the bottom line. So all this shilly-shallying around, this guy is
What does that mean?
You know what shilly-shally means.
Shilly-shally is? I think my grandmother used that at one point. But
if
I don't know, the listening audience doesn't know.
The listening audience does know what shilly-shally is. It means...
If you know what shilly-shagging is, Facebook me or
it means
tweet.
BSing around. You know good and well what it means. Hey, Scott Bolden, you just like messing with me, which I don't mind. You know, folks, you should know. This man in real life is actually my attorney.
Oh, my goodness. Full disclosure. Let me tell you this. Let me tell you what's heartbreaking and just so offensive about that video.
Sure.
Is that you get the police reports here, and you get that video, and that young man was clearly disturbed, perhaps on something, but he was walking away from the police.
Right.
And when you see that, and then you see that the possibility that the justice system may not have criminal justice for him, it just leaves you at a loss. Black people feel despair when they lose in these kinds of cases, when it's right up in your face right here. But that young man had problems. He had challenges, sure, but he was walking away from the police. He had a knife. He didn't have to be killed. That's what I'm really getting at.
That's the bottom line.
He did not have to be killed.
When you say that it blows your mind that Rahm Emanuel did not resign, the bottom line, however, is that Rahm Emanuel, who thought he had a promising political career, cannot run for governor of Illinois. This is going to plague him for the rest of his life.
And, as we saw in the video was just played by our production team. A lot going on, but he's walking away. He's clearly troubled. And I think when you see him go down, and Roland says this all the time, we're going to run this on News 1. We're going to run this because the other networks don't want to run it, and it's running right now, and we're going to continue to run it because just like in Emmett Till and his mother, I want you to see what police brutality looks like, feels like, and sounds like, and that's heartbreaking. But I got to tell you, there cannot be a moment where we don't fight for justice for this young man, whatever political party you are. Derek?
I agree with you 100%. And the thing about it is, I wrote an op-ed about this, and it's unfortunate, but in every household in America, we're having conversations with our sons on a code of conduct.
And daughters, too.
And daughters.
Sure, we cannot forget that.
Let's not forget that African-American women, too, are killed in these situations. And again, I mean, we are often described as aggressive and burly. I'll tell you what broke...
Excuse me, were you done with your point?
I'll tell you what broke my heart, though, Scott, is when we saw Philando Castile's girlfriend, when we saw Diamond Reynolds being ordered onto the ground to her knees after her fiance was killed right in her face.
No threat. She was no threat.
No, and made her get on her knees. Her 4-year-old daughter saying, "Mommy, it's going to be okay." I mean, but our families have to deal with this and internalize this time after time after time. It is utterly disgusting. That's why you're such a good lawyer, because you fight.
That's her comeback now. I'm still switching seats.
No, you ain't switching. You can switch seats the next time you guest host. This time, this is my seat.
Derek,
Don't start with me.
You want to finish your comment?
I was going to say, we're in households across America, including mine, having conversations with my son about a code of conduct, and, if you will, in terms of when you encounter the police.
That's right.
And it's unfortunate that we have to have these conversations, yes, sir, no, sir, and show this amount of respect. And we have to show them respect, but at the same time, they got to respect us, too. It needs to be reciprocal.
No doubt. Well, Kim, let me ask you something. I mean, Roland and I agree on this point. Why is it so hard for the Republicans to get this point? Before you had videos and social media, people who don't look like us believe that the police are there to protect and serve. We in our communities, no matter what community you grew up in, every young black man or older black man's got a story about being abused by the police. So why is it so hard for the Republicans to get, and what are the black Republicans doing about this?
That's a good question.
Not that you should solve the whole issue,
yeah.
but I'm saying bringing the Republican Party around on this stuff like this seems so obvious.
I think the Republican Party is trying to work on that. Black Republicans, I believe, we know what's going on. We get it, you know, and we're always trying to bring it to the table, and that's why I appreciate shows like this that always keep it going. What do they say? We're going to run this. That's why we love these shows, and we love people that are always bringing attention to it. And I have to also say, like you're talking about Diamond, how she was forced on her knees. If you look at all these cases, this is where police officers are basically saying, look, I still own this, right? I'm going to embarrass you. I am going to make you feel like you were less than.
Really.
Right, exactly. And that's what they're doing. For him to walk away and to be shot, 16 times? They're really sending a strong message, even beyond what they want to really talk about.
So what do you expect, Julianne? What would you like to see in this case? This case is about 2 years old since the arrest. What do you anticipate happening going forward?
Well, I'd like to see Van Dyke convicted. I'd like to see him thrown up under the jail. That's not likely to happen. I mean, in too many of these cases, only 4% of the cases where police officers are accused of killing a black person, and only 4% of those cases are they convicted. And usually when they're convicted, they get something like time served or something like that. But I know that the Chicago community, very activist community, is going to keep the pressure up. I know that this is going to be an issue in the forthcoming elections in Chicago and in Illinois. They have elections coming up in November of 18. Well, primaries in June or July. You know, it's your hometown. But in any case, my hope, my prayer is that there will be some accountability. And certainly, Scott, every time we have protests like this, it raises awareness. So that, as you say, having conversations with your sons and with our daughters, our young people are being basically made woke about some of this. You have young people who really have not had these kind of encounters, but many of them have. And again, it's heartbreaking. Your buddy, my nephew Anye, has really had, you know, I mean, the boy is 6'5". And it seems like not a week goes by when he's not stopped. He was incarcerated overnight one time.
Your nephew?
Yeah, my nephew. Yeah. Your buddy. But, you know, they accuse him of breaking into somebody's house. Now, the boy is 6'5". He wears about a size 17 shoe. He has to get his shoes on eBay. Well, they took the cast of the person who broke in, his feet were a size 9. Oh, wow. I mean, I would have to cut his feet in half.
Oh, I got you. But here's the deal, though. And he's a good kid, too, by the way. But here's the deal.
Of course, he's my nephew.
What is... We got gun violence, big issues in Chicago in that bucket. They might be juxtaposed to one another. I'm sorry, they may be related to one another. You have a police department that is engaged in this conduct. Where does training, psychological evaluation, and just stopping? Just stop doing it. The police are afraid of young black and brown men in our communities. How do we get them to just do your job? And you cannot, listen, if you sign up to be a police officer, I understand fear. Don't get me wrong. I'm a former prosecutor. At the same time, though, if fear is going to get in the way of you doing your job and treating everybody equally and fairly, then you don't have a God-given right to be a police officer. Derek?
I don't know with some of these shootings if it's fear. I think you just got some bad cops.
Well, a lot of bad cops.
A lot of bad cops.
But fear is a factor.
Bad racist is a factor. But at the same time, there are more officers out there who are doing their job. We got some bad ones. And I don't think we can lump the whole entire law enforcement.
But Derek,
bad situations.
But Derek,
there's some bad things to go on.
There's some jobs that you can't afford to have racists in.
I agree.
And bad actors. The police are one. They got a gun and a badge, right?
You know, the bad cops will not tell on the good.
No,
the good cops.
That doesn't free them either.
Will not tell on the bad cops. So there are people you call good cops. I mean, they're good in the sense that they mean well, but they will not blow the whistle on their boys or their buddies who are basically terrorizing communities.
Absolutely, they just can't. Like you can't have a dumb jet pilot, if you will, flying a 747. You just can't.
But you got a whole lot of dumb cops. You have a whole lot of dumb cops.
Maybe.
Racism is stupidity.
But listen, you're not going to eliminate racism, but you certainly don't need to have racism on your police force.
That's what I'm saying.
It ought to be a non-starter, if you will. Kim, last word.
Yeah, well, I totally agree. There are good cops and there are bad cops, but unfortunately, the good cops do not come forward. If I can just remind everyone about the Detective Sean Suiter case going on in Baltimore right now, to me, that's a very suspicious case. There's a lot of coincidence there, and I think this is a situation situation where good cops are afraid to come forward on the bad cops.
Well, we'll see. I mean, we're going to talk about that a little later.
Okay.
But again, you know, I just don't buy the good cop, bad cop thing. I think if you're a bad cop, then we need to do more pre-training, pre-screening, and we can't afford to have bad cops.
No.
I mean, you all are technically, or rather factually correct, but we can't afford it.
No, just
and that'll
fire
be a zero tolerance for it. You know what I mean?
Just fire them.
And we need a new Bill of Rights for the police, too, at these state legislatures, because I got to tell you, in most of them, they don't have to talk until they get a lawyer, and they don't have to talk for 3 or 4 days, and then, you know.
And then they start lying.
Well, they can lie before that, but the bottom line is it certainly doesn't help the justice process for these cops and people who are being killed. All right, ahead on News One now. Pennsylvania Superior Court orders a judge to stop stalling. Meek Mill finally gets his bail hearing. We'll get over to the case. And the Baltimore police officer shot and killed in the line of duty, we were just talking about this, is laid to rest as the manhunt for his killer continues. You're watching News One now. All right, folks, we're back. When Meek Mill's legal team filed a motion to get the rapper out of prison on bail, the request was denied by Pennsylvania Superior Court. But they also issued a message to the judge in the case. Stop stalling on his appeal motion. Earlier this month, Mill was sentenced to 2 to 4 years in prison for violating probation on a nearly 10-year-old gun and drug case. However, his team says Judge Janice Brinkley's ruling was based on personal motivations and revenge and wants her to set it aside. For some, this case points to the corruption black men face in the criminal justice system. Reverend Al Sharpton met with Mill on Monday.
I spent yesterday afternoon visiting hip-hop artist Meek Mill in jail, where I feel he's being unjustly held, as many thousands are, for minor and really insignificant probation violations. And we talked about how we've got to fight. He wants his fight to be about more than him. I told him about a man I knew well that fought the same fight and also wanted it to mean more than just for him. A man who treated me like a son, James Brown, the godfather of soul. His grandson sent me this T-shirt he made on his grandfather. I worked out in it this morning because James Brown taught me that it's not about an individual, it's about a system, an institution. He said, yes, I made mistakes, just like Meek.
Our panel, Julianne Malveaux, Derek Holley, and Kim Classic. Let's talk about Meek Mill. To our listening audience, they've heard me talk about this. I wish we had Reverend Sharpton on. We couldn't get him today, but let me tell you this.
Okay.
I listened to James Brown's music.
Me too.
I knew how he walked the streets in the riots in D.C.
Sure.
I listened to him, didn't know him personally, but Meek Mill is no James Brown.
I agree with that.
No James Brown. I love you, Reverend Sharpton, but
Right.
Meek Mill is no James
There's no
Brown.
comparison.
Let me
There's
get
no
this out, and then
comparison.
we're gonna spend some time on this.
Okay.
You've heard me say this. This case is not about corruption in the criminal justice system. There is corruption, no doubt about it. But this case is about personal responsibility, and Meek Mill, who subjected himself to papers in the criminal justice system. He pled guilty or was convicted of a gun case and a drug case. He served 8 months in prison and 5 months probation. It's 12 years later, or rather 10 years later.
You mean 5 years probation?
5 years probation. And so now we're at the 10-year mark, and he's still on probation, and somehow the criminal justice system is getting blamed for that. He's had several arrests. He's gone back to jail once, and he has also violated several orders within the probation order that he has, like leaving town without the judge's permission. These are realities that Meek Mill controls himself, not the criminal justice system. And you know, as my father says, who's a retired judge, if you can't do the time, if you don't do the crime, but if you do, you can't jaywalk when you on probation. That judge owns you, and I got to tell you,
absurd,
whether
Scott.
you're convicted or not, you violated probation, she can put you away. And you know what?
Enslavement is over with. The judge does not own anybody.
Hold on one second. All the black activism and all the fight about racial injustice in the criminal justice system, there are many fights. But this is not one of them.
I disagree
If you
with
want to fight and help Meek Mill, fight and help him take personal responsibility, because this judge has his attention, because he's doing 2 to 4.
Now he sounds like a Republican.
Nope,
up in
I'm a
here.
Democrat,
Yes,
and I'm a
do.
realist. I'm a realist.
And an attorney.
But hey, Scott, you must admit, no, you must not, because you never do. But anyway,
I might.
That there is a fair amount of discretion that's involved every step of the way. These arrests that he had, some of them seem to me to be specious. Not all of them, but certainly some of them. This notion of you can't jaywalk when you're on probation because the judge owns you. That sounds like something feudal out of the 1860s.
It's not. Let me tell you why I say that. Here's the deal. When he's in court and he agrees to that 5-year probation, it's all laid out in a document. He's asked, does he read it? Does he understand it? Does he appreciate it? Has he had a drink? Has he on drugs? No, no, no. But he understands and appreciates it, and then he signs his name. The judge signs his name, and his defense attorney signs his name. He knows for 5 years.
And you're telling me that
not even get arrested. And when you violate that probation order, you can go back to jail.
But it seems to me that there's a fair amount of personal animus in the way that this judge is dealing with this man.
Meek Mills drives this narrative. The judge doesn't.
The judge has an option to act like a fool or not, and she is acting like a fool.
She could have put him in jail 5 years ago and added time. Yeah. She didn't. Derek.
I agree. 2 things. One, certainly he's violated his probation. Dude, you got to serve
repeatedly.
Time. Repeatedly. He left town. So, I mean, so many things that the average individual would have been locked up a long time ago. And he did that. Now, and Meek, you may have to go and serve your time. But here's the other thing, though. He right now is the poster child for some criminal justice reform. Then let's use that to get some necessary criminal justice reform done.
But let's put it in the right context.
But don't you think there's some personal animus here?
Can I get Kim in, and I'll come right back to you. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so I do agree he did violate probation. He even had pictures, I guess, on his Instagram showing him out of town at award shows, things like that.
Wow.
But at the same time...
And you all are mad at the judge. Wow.
Yeah, at the same time...
Yes, I'm mad at the judge.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
At the same time, though, there was a level of professionalism that's being crossed here. To find out that the judge asked him to sign some things for him, asked him to sing a Boys to Men song. I mean, if you want to be a professional judge, be a professional judge, and don't cross that line.
Well, let me tell you,
that's why I said we can use him as a...
And I'm saying precisely,
this
judge is unprofessional. To ask someone to sing in a courtroom, that's demeaning. I mean, this Scott,
Judge got a lot of power. I'm going to give you some context.
But this is power abuse, and the use of the words, the judge owns you. I mean, I just bristle when I hear that, because nobody owns another human being.
You get arrested and you plead to probation and you sign that paper.
If I get arrested, I'm calling you, and I ain't signing no paper.
Yeah, probation. Here's the deal, guys. I understand that the allegations against her appear to be quite offensive and unprofessional. But let me tell you something. This judge has spent 10 years with this young man. And when you have spent 10 years with a young man and you're on probation, this judge, most judges, African-American female judge, okay, are trying to save the lives of these young men.
And I agree with that.
Like that or not,
I agree with that.
So the banter in court, the banter in her chambers, in the presence of her lawyer, it's not fair to say she said this, she said that, she said this, because within the context of those discussions, I can tell you, they may not be appropriate in hindsight, but they sound to me, as a former prosecutor, and they're there too, it sounds to me that if he's breaking probation and he's got and who he is signed with is not helping him get past probation and be responsible, it doesn't strike me as strange that she says, well, maybe you need to get a new manager or a new company.
Well, that's not her business. That is not her business. I mean, the fact that he broke the law is her business. No, the fact that he broke the law, the fact that he left town,
violating probation.
I mean, I will concede that he does not seem to be a good actor.
Just let him go, right?
Yeah.
It's been 10 years, 12 years, let him go.
That's too long to be on probation.
And what about his violations of probation?
Violating his...
Exactly.
And she could have locked him up a long time ago.
Well, she didn't. So now let the brother go. Let him continue with his career. I mean, let's have a little reparative justice here.
Well,
let me go.
Listen. Come on now, all together now.
This has to be the last word. You know, guys, here's the deal. Our communities of color, we have a lot of experience, unfortunately, in dealing with probation and what have you, okay? But at the same time, we as a people have got to take professional responsibility for our family members and friends. Now, you're right. There are a lot of injustices out here. There really are. A lot of injustices. But let me tell you, part of fixing the criminal justice system, you have this bucket right here that we can't let a racist criminal justice system oppress us. But in cases like this and others, we have got to hold our young black men and women accountable.
If you unpack this, A. Scott Bolden, if you unpack all these probation violations, I'm sure you'll find some of them that are quite egregious, like Instagramming your out-of-town nonsense. But I think there are others that you will find where there was discretion, or if he was arrested for jaywalking, that's nonsense. I mean, hundreds of thousands of people jaywalk every day.
But hundreds of thousands of people haven't been convicted for gun charges and drug charges. That'll have to be the last word. This debate will go on. Next on News One Now, the woman who live-streamed the deadly police shooting of Philando Castile will get a six-figure settlement from the city. I'll have more on the deal for Diamond Reynolds. Keep it locked on News One Now. We'll be right back. All right, folks, we're back. The suspected serial killer accused of terrorizing a Tampa, Florida neighborhood for nearly 2 months is finally in custody. Police arrested 24-year-old Howard Emmanuel Donaldson III Tuesday evening, ending a 51-day manhunt. He is now charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder. Officers arrested Donaldson at a nearby McDonald's in Tampa. They say Donaldson's co-worker at the fast food restaurant alerted police after he left a food bag with a gun inside. Police say Donaldson has admitted to owning the gun, but not committing the murders. They also have found data on his cell phone, placing him near the crime scenes for the first 3 murders. And they're taking a look at regional, or rather, I guess, the neighborhood surveillance video that's out there.
I assure you, this is the man who did this. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do to go ahead and get a conviction in this case, because that's when truly justice will be served, is when we get a conviction.
Authorities believe Donaldson targeted his victims at random under the cover darkness. They say he started his killing spree on October 9th, killing 22-year-old Benjamin Mitchell, 32-year-old Monica Hoffa, 20-year-old Anthony Neboa, and 60-year-old Ronald Felton. The McDonald's manager who tipped off the police about Donaldson is being called a hero. Her husband spoke to reporters on Wednesday.
I'm so proud of my wife for handling that the way she did. She's a soldier and such a strong sister. So I couldn't be more proud of her than that.
The manager has received a $9,000 reward for her efforts and continues to receive more donations. Good stuff. The manhunt is still on for the gunman who killed a Baltimore police detective as loved ones said their final farewells. On Wednesday, Sean Suter was laid to rest after a funeral at the Mount Pleasant Church in Baltimore. Fellow officers and family members packed the church to honor the 43-year-old father of 5. Authorities say someone shot and killed Suter as he worked on a 2016 homicide investigation in West Baltimore. They say the killer shot Suter in the head with his own gun. A $250,000 reward is being offered for information leading to an arrest. Authorities say they plan to update the public on Suter's case later this week. Very sad case, very sad case. I want to go to our panel with Julianne, Derek, and Kim. What do you make? I think you spoke of earlier of this Baltimore incident. Kim, lots of issues out here from the community and whether this was a hit, if you will, on this police officer who was said to testify against some rogue police officers in federal court, or at least in a federal grand jury, I think. What's your take on it?
It's hard not to believe that that was the case. You see so many things that have happened, even from the moment he got shot. And this is another thing, and I don't know, you might know a little bit more about this than I do. Would it actually, I guess, jeopardize the case if they were to release the 911 call the partner made? Because you have to remember, the partner did not call on his radio. He called 911 to then say that his partner, Sean Suter, had been shot. He then took him...
And he was there when he was shot.
Right.
I don't know whether he saw it or not because they were on the gunfire.
Well, they said he was taking cover across the street. You're taking cover across the street.
Why didn't you use your radio?
Clearly, you're not a first responder kind of guy. You know, if gunshots are going down and you're running away. But yeah, he didn't use his radio. He called 911. They then get him in a patrol car. That patrol car was then in a car accident on the way to the hospital. They then had to transfer him to an ambulance to get him then to the hospital. I mean, just so many things are piling up here. It's like if they release a 911 call, maybe I would feel a little bit more comfortable in knowing what took place at that very moment. Now, they don't even have a description of the guy. The police came on, I believe it was C4's show on WBAL just a couple of days ago, and they said, well, we don't want to give out too much information because then people would know. What case?
This is a public servant that's been killed with his own gun
have you ever
in the head,
where they don't give a description of the suspect besides having a black jacket on and with a white stripe?
And how is it that you don't have a description because you had a partner there? Julianne?
Exactly.
There is such a thing as police protocol, which is part partner apparently violated. That's why you have a radio. You're not supposed to be using your cell phone or, you know, TPs and drums. I mean, this is just absurd. I agree with you that
this panel agrees. Wait.
Go right ahead.
Well, no, but
there's a lot of inconsistencies with this whole case.
It is. And the optics are bad. And to see there's a 43-year-old man with 5 children. That's the heartbreaking part of it. And you know, we don't know who the assailant is, but we know that the police is being extremely shaky and very shady, and you have to wonder if they will be behaving the same way if the person who was killed, frankly, was white. You know, I just have to put that in there.
By the way, you have a state's attorney who's up for re-election next year, who former police officers are running against her. And the reason I raise that is because if you're going to get some independent review of this circumstance, of this shooting, you're going to need either the state's attorney or the feds or someone, because that thin blue line is still there. Now, right now, the chief of police is denying that there's any connection so far. But I got to tell you, just to give the public and the family comfort, perhaps they need to have either the state's attorney or the feds come in and do their investigation. Derek, what do you think?
They're going to have to, again, because of all the inconsistencies, but it goes towards what we were just talking earlier. You know, there are some bad cops among the ranks, and it just makes the whole law enforcement community look so bad.
Look for the family to file a civil lawsuit, because a civil lawsuit, civil justice, if you will, you get discovery, and depending on what the lawsuit is about, vis-a-vis negligence or failing to protect or failure to train and what have you, I think the real story is going to come out. You know, the truth rises. It may be delayed, but it does rise. So, Julianne?
You know, eventually, Scott, but I think that partner needs to be fully investigated, and the Baltimore police chief just needs to keep his mouth shut, because and the description needs to be released.
And the partner was at the funeral. I think his partner spoke at the funeral.
Well, you have to also keep in mind, the partner that he had that day was not his usual partner. He was assigned a different partner for that day.
This is reading like a movie. You ought to write a script on this.
I got this thing down packed. So, and then also you have to understand, the feds should have came in immediately. For them to shut down Harlem Park area, this is where they shut down, they roped it off for 72 hours. They're the ones investigating themselves, basically, in a way. And then, then you have them, they could be, you know, planting evidence or removing evidence. You don't even know,
72
right?
hours, yeah.
72 hours, you're holding people hostage, basically, in this neighborhood. And so, yeah, I just don't understand why the feds aren't there, why this is even up for discussion.
Here's another deal, though.
Be there.
How many times have you seen police officers get assassinated, if you will, and there's just this major delay in catching the person or identifying the person in a West Baltimore neighborhood in this case? That just doesn't happen. It just doesn't. Last word.
Right.
Clearly, somebody knows who did this. Someone is covering it up. And as you said, the feds need to be in. I want to hear the 911 call. I think we all do.
Yeah, I think they're going to have to disclose more. This isn't going away, but the community has to keep pressure, and the family's going to have to keep pressure on them, too. All right, folks. We'll be back after this break with more news. You're watching News One Now. See you soon. Okay, folks, we're back. The girlfriend of Philando Castillo, who live-streamed the aftermath of his death at the hands of a police officer, will get $675,000 from the city of St. Anthony, Minnesota. The St. Anthony City Council voted unanimously in favor of awarding Diamond Reynolds the money. She will also receive $125,000 from the League of Minnesota Cities Insurance Trust on behalf of the city of Roseville. That's after Reynolds complained of distress from being detained by police officers after the shooting, and probably a lot more. We saw that shooting. She should have complained, but there was a lot of stress just being there. The settlement prevents Reynolds from bringing future litigation against the city. Reynolds was in the car with her 4-year-old, I think you're watching it now, with her 4-year-old daughter in July of 2016 when former officer Geronimo Yanez shot and killed Castillo. She live-streamed the aftermath on Facebook, which went viral. Yanez was found not guilty of manslaughter and endangerment charges. He is no longer employed by the St. Anthony Police Department. Reynolds released a statement about the settlement. A portion says, quote, while no amount of money can change what happened, bring Philando back, or erase the pain that me and my daughter have suffered, I hope that the closing of this chapter will allow us to get our lives back and move forward. End of quote. We certainly hope so, too. Now, in the latest in the Flint, Michigan water crisis, the former utilities director was pleaded no contest to a misdemeanor charge. Daughtry Johnson took a plea deal on Tuesday, which drops 2 felony charges. Johnson's attorney says the misdemeanor will also be dropped if this client continues to cooperate with the Attorney General's office. A special prosecutor says Johnson's cooperation is what led to them offering him a plea deal.
You know, taxpayers should be happy. And this is moving the ball down the field, if you will, as we hold accountable and strengthen our case as it relates to moving and answering questions.
Flint officials didn't properly treat the water from the Flint River in 2014 and 2015. As a result, corrosive water leaked lead or caused lead to break away from the old pipes, contaminating the system. At least 1 person died from Legionnaire's disease, and thousands of children were diagnosed with high lead levels. More than a dozen people are facing charges related to the water crisis. There are conflicting reports about the amount of signatures on a petition to restore felons' voting rights after they complete their sentences. Florida Politics reports that the petition has received 900,000 signatures, according to Desmond Meade, the chair of Floridians for Fair Democracy. The petition is pushing to add an amendment to allow voters to decide if felons should receive their voting rights back after completing their sentence, including parole and probation, Julianne.
Why are you calling me out about that?
According to the ballot summary, the amendment would not apply to those convicted of murder or sexual offenses unless the governor and cabinet vote to restore their voting rights on a case-by-case basis. Meade released a statement about the petition saying, quote, knowing that we set the goal of collecting 1 million signatures, the fact that we are less than 100,000 petitions away from our goal is an amazing attestation to the growing energy, excitement, and support around second chances, end of quote. Okay, the Florida Division of Elections website shows that there are nearly 450,000 verified signatures on the petition. They are working to verify the other 450,000 signatures. Charges have been dropped against the mother who tried to catch, also, by the way, charges have been dropped against the mother who tried to catch her child's bullies by secretly recording them. Sarah Sims has been charged with a felony intercepting wire, electronic, or oral communications, and with a misdemeanor which is contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Sims could have faced 5 years in prison if convicted. Sims put a recording device in the backpack of her child and sent her to school in Norfolk, Virginia, in hopes of catching proof of other children bullying her daughter, after her daughter had complained about being bullied. School officials found out and reported the incident to the police. Now get this. Prosecutors say that they had enough evidence to charge Sims at the time, but 2 days after she appeared on several national networks, prosecutors dropped the charges after reviewing the facts and reviewing those tapes probably. Let me go to the panel. All right, here's the deal. You know, her child's being bullied in Norfolk.
My hometown.
No help. Apparently no help from the school.
Right.
She puts a listening device in, and because Virginia is a two-party state consent whereby you can record, but both people have to know they're being recorded, they brought charges against her, not really addressing the fact that her daughter's being bullied. What do you make of that, Julianne? I know you got something to say about this.
Yeah, I got something to say about
everything. This is
crazy. But this is some of the craziest thing I've ever seen. The child has been complaining about the bullying. I mean, where's Melania Trump? She's supposed to be...
Well, she's married to a bully, so I mean, she can't really help
that's a contradiction. That's a contradiction in terms. But the fact is that this bullying thing at our... bullying thing at our schools really has to stop.
Get your chance.
And this lady did what she had to do to protect her daughter. Good for the news outlets for letting her on there, and stupid police for trying to, instead of messing with this woman, arrest the darn bullies.
Or have the school do an investigation in conjunction with this. It really makes no sense, but good work also by the prosecutor's office. Justice delayed, but it wasn't denied ultimately, and so good for them. I hope they can move forward. Derek?
I agree. Justice delayed. But it did happen, and certainly I think they should have investigated the school initially when the parent first came to him about the situation. It's unfortunate she had to plant a taping device in the child's backpack.
Well, it was desperate to do it. But what about this? When they found out about it, Why call the police? Why not call her in, have a parent-teacher or administrator conference, and say, tell me about that. Tell me about that. No, I want you to say it.
What's race got to do with this?
What does race have to do with this?
Race has to do with it.
Well, do you think if she was a white mother or white father, that they would not have reported it to the police?
No.
If black children were bullying a white child, those children would be thrown up under the school.
We got to get on that right away. We got to get on that right away. Kim?
Yeah, I'm glad that national attention was brought to this, because I don't think they would have reversed it if it had not gone around social media. I also would like to say, and I'm not saying I'm a conspiracy theorist or anything like that.
You've had a couple on the show
but I wonder, because the way they did handle it is suspicious. And I wonder if the person they're accusing of being a bully, or some of the bullies, I wonder if they have connections somehow, some way.
More than likely.
Yeah, this smelled very foul to me.
Well, the other thing is that they have not released is what's on the tape. You know, they confiscated the tape.
Right.
I don't know whether they're giving it back or not, but what have they done with what's on the tape? Because even the mother says, I didn't listen to what was on the tape. Apparently, it was running for 3 or 4 hours or however long and stuff, so we simply really don't know.
So has the school done anything to date about this bullying? This young girl is being traumatized, and basically her love of learning is being suppressed by the fact that she associates school with bullying.
This could be beyond
Apparently,
bullying.
they moved her to a different class, I think, which seemed to be underwhelming to me, but go right ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, this could be beyond bullying. When you hear the tape, I wonder, could there be a hate crime that they're kind of hiding?
That they're kind of hiding.
More than likely.
Yeah. So how do we fix it, though?
Your
I mean, it's a public school.
It goes on.
How do we fix it, though? You got a public school. Most public schools and private schools have a zero tolerance for bullying. Clearly, this child is being bullied. At least that's the allegation, and some cooperation. But what do we need to do to fix that? This will have to be the last
number one, investigation, and that mother needs to run for the school board. That's what
get involved.
The year of the woman. The year of the woman, without a doubt. Where are we going next? Okay. The new TV, that'll have to be the last word. The new TV original holiday movie, Miss Me This Christmas, premieres this Sunday. We'll talk with one of the stars, actresses Eva Marcel. You're watching News One now on TV One. Okay, folks, we're back. Eva Marcel plays Trish McDonald, a free-spirited, fun-loving, and wildly funny best friend on TV One's original movie, Miss Me for Christmas. Her job? To cheer up her best friend whose marriage is on the rocks. Okay? But does she succeed? Let's take a look.
Damn, I look good. Oh, everyone looks good at Couture, baby. Everyone. I don't think I can do this. What? Come on, G. Christmas time in the city are made for drunken mistakes. But I'm not all the way single. Oh, swerve. Don't waste that. Hold up. Let me check it out. Checking. Hit it. I'm sorry. House rules. We're hot. We're out. Babe, do not go Scrooge on me, please. We need some Christmas cheer. At least the holidays, some. Please. You are so nasty. Franklin is... Don't say that. Come here.
All right. Joining us now on FaceTime is actress Eva Marcel. How are you doing?
I'm fabulous this morning. How are you guys doing?
We're good. It's a later in the morning than it is for you, but we deeply we deeply appreciate you joining us. Tell us about Miss Me This Christmas.
Miss Me This Christmas. Oh my goodness. I'm so excited about this movie. It's a feel-good Christmas movie, but the cool thing about this movie is that it's one of those that deals with situations that you wouldn't normally put in a movie, which is like the drama of life. You know, it's Christmas time, so you want to keep everything fluffy and airy, but the reality of the situation is that life happens to all of us, no matter what time of the year it is. And so it's kind of showing how friends stick together and get through the rough times, especially in the holidays when it's supposed to be all about cheer.
Absolutely. And I think women do that a lot better than men, or at least differently than men.
We definitely do it differently. Yeah, you guys get in your whiskey and sports, and we go shopping.
Like that's going to solve anything for us as men. So we look forward to certainly seeing it. What was most attractive to you about taking your role in Miss Me This Christmas?
You know, two things kind of stood out to me about this role. The character itself, Trish McDonald, she is one of those fun-loving kind of girls. She's really the friend that everybody needs.
Right, right.
Fortunate if you have her in life. I play an heiress, which, you know, allows money not to be an issue. But beyond that, she kind of takes life by the horns, and she's not afraid to live her best life despite what other people think. And so just the freeness of the character, and then the fact that I get to play alongside the character of Regina, played by Erica Ash.
Sure.
She is the funniest, the sweetest, the most beautiful, the most talented leading lady ever. I've worked with her a few times before, and on Real Husbands of Hollywood on BET. We worked together for a few years on that, and then we did a movie called Sister Code together. And so just to work alongside with her again, it's like not even work. I get paid to have fun. And so those two reasons were, you know, so easy for me to say yes and decide to sign on to this film.
You know, I saw a couple of clips, and I would describe your character as fearless. And so many of us need fearless friends in our lives. I mean, whether you're a guy or a woman, I always admire the guys and men and women who are friends of mine who take life by the horns, who are fearless, and you marvel at them, and then you say, I wish I could be more like that person. And you try to be, but you know, you got to do that in your own space, if you will. You know, you can't do it just like that person, because we don't all have the same personality and stuff. Do you want young women and young men to, is that one of the things you want to be a takeaway from this Christmas movie?
For sure. Living life fearlessly and without regret, for sure. But, you know, the beauty of it is the relationship between Trish and Regina is there's a balance, because Regina is that person that is very thought out and very planned and very intentional. And I think in life, especially with millennials in this day and age, you got to remember that life doesn't just happen. You know, you kind of can affect what happens to you and the way life goes for you. And so with Regina being a lot more thought out, and then with Trish being the one that's kind of like, excuse my French, balls to the wall, you put them together and you have like the most amazing gumbo. So I think it's the balance between the two that really makes the film and the characters stand out.
Well, Eva, thank you so very much. That's all the time we have for. Let me just remind our listening audience, Miss Me This Christmas premieres this Sunday, December 3rd, right here on TV One at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. This is News One Now. We'll be right back. We're back. I want to thank my panel, Julianne, Derek, and Kim. Couldn't have got through it without you. I think it was a fun show. Thanks for watching News One Now. I'm A. Scott Bolden. Roland Martin will be back tomorrow. Have a great day and help somebody.